I really enjoyed the last session, and equally I always enjoy bringing local champions together, and that's our next session. We've got, I think, 5 different short presentations on things that are happening in this local patch. The local patch is reasonably large, and the first of those local patches is the City of Swan, with the City of Swan with the Reserve Projects Management and Maintenance area and their Indigenous trainees, and we've got 3 of them right here: Stephen Freestone, Amy Freestone, and Chaz Collard. Welcome, and really love having you here. You're the people who make the difference actually on the ground. It's the hands, the legs, the machinery, and doing things that make a difference and change landscapes and manage them. So over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, talk to it like it's an ice cream, like your best ice cream ever.
A bit nervous up here today, so bear with me. Begin today by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather here today, and I pay my respects to the elders, past and present. And I extend that to the and respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Freestone, and beside me is Amy Freestone and Chaz Collard. And today we'll be speaking about the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander traineeship offered by City of Swan. The trainee program at City of Swan consists of 2 Indigenous trainees who work alongside with the environmental team. The trainee program runs for 12 months, completing a Certificate 2 in Horticulture and Conservation Land Management, with the option of extending for another 12 months to complete a Cert 3 in Horticulture, Conservation Land Management, if the trainee successfully completes that first 12 months.
It's not working. In this picture up here, that's the nursery at City of Swan, which during Stephen's traineeship, he helped build it. And now Chaz and I use it to propagate plants from seed, which we collect from City of Swan reserves. This allows us to correct provenance, which means they will get planted at the reserves where the seed was collected from. This is also a good teaching aid, as it allows trainees to see plants in all different stages and growth, which helps with their identification skills and flora. The Re-Vegetation of Waggle Lagoon is a project where the City of Swan environmental team is tasked with revegetating a swampland near the Swan Equestrian Centre. This site is extremely important to the local Noongar people, as it is believed to be a spot where the rainbow serpent rested. This project has been going on for many years, and it has involved many City of Swan trainees, including ourselves, which makes us feel very proud and honoured to have worked in such a significant location.
Also during the program, we learned about Indigenous culture and bushcraft techniques. Above are a few examples. We've got the soap bush, the fire sticks, pressure flaking, string making, and spearing gidgee making.
As a past trainee, I've completed both the Cert 2 and 3 in Horticulture Conservation Land Management at the City of Swan, which opened after that up a few doorways to a lot of opportunities, which involved me leaving City of Swan, and I went to City of Rockingham and worked as an environmental officer there, where I continued studies into a Certificate 4 in Conservation Land Management, and I'm still completing that. I've actually come back to the City of Swan now because it's such a great place to work. And yeah, have a job there in a horticulture background. And yeah, this is just an example of what you can achieve and go on to do after completing a traineeship. And yeah, the whole reason of being up here is probably just to open up the eyes of other local governments to just traineeships and the possibilities that come with them, because you're sort of getting a person who's around the age of 17, 18, really interested in the bush, and you're getting a long time worker out of them. So yeah, just encourage you to sort of look at that avenue in that space. Thanks.
Just stay there for a minute. Are there any questions? And I think it's a fantastic point, and it just feeds right into the how do you engage the youth, and you've just given a great example. So traineeships is one of those key areas where you can bring people in, give them the training skills, and also do the practical work that gives you the motivation. So fantastic example. Has anyone got a question? Yep.
What age do you have to be able to do a certificate? Is there a minimum or a maximum? Hi. Is there a minimum or maximum age you need to be to do the certificates?
Well, at City of Swan, they're sort of targeting the ages. I started when I was 17 at City of Swan. So yeah, it's sort of targeting just out of high school type students, and just sort of like leading them to like future pathways and stuff, because as a 17-year-old kid, after I left high school, I never knew that these sort of pathways existed. So yeah.
They can start at school. It is one of the areas where I think it's really valuable to begin them in year 11, 12.
Hi, Narelle from Douglas and Blanco Group. I'm just interested to know what the platform was that used to find out about the training.
Traineeship.
Maybe not.
The traineeships used to be done by City of Swan, but now they're advertised and sort of go through a selection process for a company called Nudge. Don't know if you've heard it or not. And they sort of take you before you go into a traineeship and sort of just let you know what to expect in like a workplace, and sort of give you some training sort of to take that next step into a workplace and what it means to have a 9 to 5 pretty much. And yeah, it gives you some pretty handy skills.
Any other question? We can just take one more and then we need to move on. Great.
When you're talking to your family and your friends and your mates about what you do, and you say, yeah, I've been working, and they go, yeah, what do you do? What do you tell them?
Yeah, I just pretty much tell them that I restore bushland and sort of go back to those childhood memories of, like, as a kid, I used to live in the bush a fair bit, just run around playing armies with me brothers and sisters, like most of you, climb trees, see who'd get to the top quickest. And yeah, I pretty much just tell them that I'm sort of keeping that in good nick for when we have kids, so that they'll get to enjoy it as much as we did.
Thanks, Steve, Amy and Chaz, and I think that's an excellent answer, and once again, it sounds like, please sign me up. And good on the City of Swan for putting on trainees. Let's recognise that. I want this mob on my team. Denmark? Anybody? Next, we're going to hear from Una Bell, and she's from the Jane Brook Catchment Group, and they've got some really innovative new initiatives. So that's exciting. Over to you, Una.
It's on. It's on. Yep. I'm told this is on. Okay, good afternoon, but next morning, isn't it? Yep. Good morning, everybody. I'm chair of Jane Brook Catchment Group, and we had several problems. We used to have these meetings at night in a room, and I don't think anybody really wanted to go. And sometimes we were struggling to get a quorum, even though the work that we do is quite significant. It's really hard to get people together. And then we had the COVID lockdown, and I thought, right, this is an opportunity. I have the first slide, please. This was our last meeting in Black Cockatoo Reserve in Mundaring. What I changed over was to outdoor meetings. and they work really well. So instead of having a few people sitting in a room at night thinking, you know, I'd rather be home watching TV, they're all out going on a walk first up. We get a lot of young people coming along, which I'm really pleased about. And people really enjoy the meetings. I even enjoy running the meetings, and that's saying something. So first up, we found we do a walk 9 o'clock, meeting at 10 o'clock, and we lug all chairs and thermoses and tables into reserve and have a really nice time. That was our last meeting. Can I have the next one, please? This was one in Alp Street Reserve in Mount Helena. People, I think it's some sort of compulsive obsessive disorder, picking up weeds and rubbish, I think we all suffer from. And so we do our little bit as we go through the walk. This is one of the most important reserves in the Shire of Mundaring. With Jane Brooke, we incorporated a catchment group, part of the East Region Catchment Management Program, which now runs out of Perth NRM. But we're separately incorporated so we can take all the funding. But we also have a big protection thing for our friends groups. We have 23 different friends groups that work with us. Some of those are registered with the Shire of Mundaring, some of them are with DBCA, some aren't registered with anybody. We just support them and provide insurance cover for them. Next one, please. This is at Lion Mill Reserve. This is one of our sites. We've had a lot of self-funding and community river care for this site. And this is another one of our walks. It's a very wet site, as you can see by the gumboots. And it has what's a lot of weed, particularly woody weeds, which have been removed now. And the regeneration there is amazing. And also we found once we took out a lot of the weeds, Watsonia, guess what comes up? All the lovely native grasses. I haven't heard about them today, but I've got to put a word in for them. Can I have the next one, please? And then I got a bit more ambitious. And we used to have like a gazebo at the WIM Festival. This is in Mount Helena, right at the junction where Jane Brooke starts. And we used to just have a little gazebo, a little display, and it's only on every second year. And I thought, we're going to do a gazebo. Let's go the whole way and have a land care tent. Why not? Then when I figured out all the work and what it cost, I thought maybe it wasn't such a good idea. But it went brilliantly well. And we sort of begged, borrowed stuff from all over the place. We made up all that bunting ourselves with Jane Brooke and Land Care. The local learning centre where we have our committee meetings had these great big flowers that they'd made for an open day and didn't have a further use, so therefore we borrowed those. We got a stuffed riccarli from the Shire of Mundaring, that was very popular. Can I have the next one, please? This is inside the tent. We had native grass display, we had nest box display from Simon Cherryman. We invited other catchment groups in. Helena Catchment Group turned up. We had friends group displays. We had Robin from Mundaring Garden Centre gave us some native local plants to sell. And we had a young guy called Andrea Wallace who was brilliant. And the whole thing just went extremely well. We're busy all day. Next one. And Stephen, you're going to stand up and take a bow. Come on. I didn't know Stephen was going to be here today, but I did warn him. Stephen hates weeds with a vengeance. Good on him. And he spent all day out there with his weed display talking and trying to educate and get through to people on the importance of weeds. And the last one, the second last one. This is Karen from the East Region Catchment Management Program who does our coordination. There's 7 incorporated catchment groups in the East Region program. Simon Cherry with nest boxes, and there's also Friends Group members and Jane Brooke Catchment Group members. Simon donated one of his nesting boxes too as a raffle prize, which was really sweet of him. So the whole thing just went really well. And people are saying, when are you doing the next one? Right. So last slide. You're talking about young people. This is a young guy called Andrea Wallace. He's amazing. He loves insects. And they're all his photos that he was selling at a previous exhibition to raise money for Kanyana, the wildlife hospital in Lesmurdy. And I invited him along. And I think it's for young people like this that we really need to support and really encourage. But I just found when I look back at the photos, they all had people in them. I was a bit surprised. And I thought it's really by the community, going out there in the community, encouraging people that we're going to really make a difference to land care. And that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. We've got time just for 1 or 2 questions to Una. No, actually, Una, I wanted to ask you how you connected up with the young guy whose interest is in insects and photography because, you know, once again, it's a great entree into engaging young people with their passion. It's not about us, it's about what interests them in their language and so on.
I'd heard about Andrea Wallace through the networking, and I saw in the local paper, the Echo, that he's having an exhibition of his photographs at Kanyana one Sunday afternoon to raise money for Kanyana. So I went along, and that's where I met Andrew. And then I invited him to come to our land care tent and put up a display. We'd cover all the costs, and he was selling his photos. So it was quite deliberate on my account. Part of what I was doing with the land care tent was not just going out into the community, but also it was a really good networking opportunity. And deliberately trying to get young people in there, and Andrew in particular I thought was really good. His interest in insects and just nature and everything is really enthusiastic, and it's really quite contagious. So it was going out there and really recruiting people. Being proactive.
Yep, getting out there and recruiting people and being proactive with it. Sounds good to me. Anybody else got a question or a comment to make on that? Cool. And having meetings, walks, picking up rubbish, which is a passion of mine too. Yes, it is an obsession. How many other people have that obsession? Yeah, quite a few of us. It sounds great fun. And, you know, it's another one of those, oh, sign me up. I would like to have more of my meetings outdoors and going for a walk and being in nature. That would be really cool. Have to be thinking about that a bit more closely, I think. I'd now like to invite Ken Patterson to come up here and share from the Friends of Pease Brook, and particularly passionate about weed control and revegetation over the last little patch. Over to you, Ken.
What a wonderful venue and a wonderful day to all get together like this. Look, the Friends of PC Brook got together 20 years ago this year with their heart set on managing the terrible weed issue in the nearby reserve, the Ship Road Reserve, as well as the adjoining Kalamunda National Park. Now there's 80 hectares in one, 375 in the other. So it's just a little plot. Okay. This year we have been working on, in fact we finalised a project that was to look at an area of Watsonia at the confluence of the brook with the Helena River. And so we have within this PC Gully our project of weed control and revegetation. Now the project itself was funded through a River Care grant of $28,890.78, which was just fantastic. It made it all possible. And the whole idea was to rid this area of Watsonia. Could I have the first slide up there? Sorry, back. Right, so I'd just like to point out the area so you can get in mind a couple of issues that you had. The area was this one here. This was a previous project. But what is important to consider is that little road at the top there, because that was the only thing that made it possible really, and that was Victor Road in Helena Valley. And the Water Corporation gave us permission to use that road to access the site, which meant we only had to walk 400 metres, not 700 metres, if we have four-wheel drives available. Otherwise, it's a 3.5 kilometre walk in to the site. So we're very, very much appreciative of them, as well as members of the group who were prepared to use their four-wheel drives to make it all possible. So the plan was to work on this Watsonia, target weed. If there's anyone not heard of Watsonia, no, oh, well, I don't have to talk about it then. You know what a terrible weed it is. It spreads so readily with the corms and the bulbils, as well as the seed it produces. And it had been doing this for perhaps 60, 70, who knows how many years in this area. So it's a terrible nuisance. We had to employ a contractor to initially spray the area in 2018, and then a follow-up spray 2019, and then we did own spraying. The Friends group did own spraying in the following 2 years to complete the task. So it was finished this year. I wonder, can we have the next slide, please? And you can see the nature of the task we were facing here. The Helena River and PC Brook, and that is, in fact, the confluence you're seeing there. And look at all that Watsonia prior to treatment. And the next slide, please. I think we made a difference. If you look into the background here, you might see the boundary that's right back through. That's probably not the best one. It's way back in the distance there. Enormous area that was taken on board. Next slide, please. These are slides of 3 of the monitoring sites we used. The enormity of the task, I think, is readily seen in that second photo. And again, please. Yes. So it's a huge area. The outcome of having cleared that Watsonia was just marvellous. But what we then needed to do is to do the revegetation work. And the revegetation work involved getting seed that we had collected using licence permit holders from the park itself and germinated and grown to seedlings by a pace in Fremantle and transferred to our end where we did a big sorting of all the trays of seedlings into those that were water hardy and those are water dependent, colour coded them all in mixed species in trays, and they were then stacked into a trailer we have to bring them down to the site. The trip to the site was a 12-kilometre trip for me, and I lived closest to the site than most other people, so it was quite a haul. But that's what we did, and we had then planting days where we had employed work power to plant 500 seedlings, and then 2 days later we had the group doing a planting, and we had there 600 seedlings rather, and some of us involved in boring holes using augers, and others doing the planting. Next slide, please. So I don't know if that looks like me using an auger there or not, or cutting down the tree, I'm not sure. But that's my first experience with an auger. And by the time I drilled 300 holes, we had another a lady now working for Circle who was assisting. Both of us had deltoids that were quite magnificent, I'm sure. It was quite challenging. But then as we dug our holes, we were followed then by the planting group. And what a marvellous feeling it is to be involved in something like that when you get a community involvement. It's just very satisfying. We had 16 people in all involved, our own members plus friends, relatives, and anyone else that could be collared into the task. Thanks. Next slide. No, there should be another one there somewhere. Not there? That's it. Okay. So there were 16 of us involved. If you do a head count there's only 14, unless you count the one that's being introduced to the role in the front line there. One is missing, and I need to acknowledge, is Linda Tomlinson. Where's Linda? Oh, there she is, hiding there. She's the photographer, so she didn't appear there. And one of our younger ladies was playing football in the afternoon, so I had to leave early. But this is just a great sense of achievement after a busy morning. A fantastic achievement it was. So this was our project then completed. The results, we expected to have a pretty good result from our plantings because we'd had follow-up rains. We'd done this in late July when rains followed within a couple of days, and then during summer we had quite a wet summer, and so we rather hoped that there'd be good survival rates. It wasn't quite as good as we expected, but I think when the plants are left on their own there, we didn't, as Neville suggested, go around with a teaspoon of water for each plant. It was too remote for us to do that. We left them to their own devices, and but what was really terrific was to see the amount of natural regeneration that took place. Quite amazing in an area that had been covered by this Watsonia for such a long period of time. So quite a wonderful achievement for us. What is really good for the group itself is that it achieved something that the group decided they wanted to do in the first 7 years of their existence, and that was to get from the start of the national park to the confluence in 7 years. We did it in 20, right? But we're there. We're a small distance away from it. There's about 300 metres or so of area that still has to be done to make it possible for us to make that claim. So a great job, very satisfying for all those involved. Thank you.
It's another great example of thinking ahead, you know, having a long-term plan. And I noticed that on your first slide, you know, that, yeah, talking about what are we doing now, but we've done quite a bit else, and you've actually got an overall plan, you know, and that adds to neighbouring groups that will be doing the next bit and the next bit. We just need enough groups to do the jigsaw, don't we? To make sure that we actually know what the overall picture of the jigsaw is going to look like, and then we can crack on with our piece of the jigsaw.
If I could just comment that one of the issues we face is that because of the remoteness of the site, it's difficult to access it, but it's right at the limit of our endurance, particularly, as has been mentioned earlier, a few of us are getting a bit of age on our side. It just takes time to get to the site. But one of the problems that when we look at that area is that if you look across the river, a whole hillside of Watsonia, and if we were to drive along Victor Road all the way to Mundaring Weir, we'd probably find the same. So it's just the tip of the iceberg, and for us to keep that area free of this stuff, we've taken on a burden. And so there's a question of capacity, whether we can, you know, accept this huge area for such a relatively small group of about 10 people.
Sounds like Ken and the Peasbrook group need a little buddy group who can help, and it could be something the Intrepid Landcare might be willing to partner with, you know, and a group of young people to come in and help would be good, wouldn't it?
Everyone here could assist us on our busy being Sunday.
Sunday, we encourage promotion of events, and has anyone got a comment or a question to ask Ken? Yeah.
I'll say my name this time. My name's Amber, and I'm from the Dumble Young Landcare group and Activate the Wheat Belt, which is a tree planting music festival. My question is do you think you would, you know, in talking about groups or people looking after the areas that you're restoring, approaching schools in that area on an annual basis to kind of continue that stewardship, would that be something that you would look into as a way to continue that and ensure that it's going to be looked after if other groups don't come in?
We have thought of that. I was teaching at Rossmine Senior High School for 38 years as head of biological sciences there, but I had planned on, for several of our other projects, we might take a group of kids in to do this. It didn't happen because of costs of transport and that sort of thing, but also the way we are managing the weeds is by spraying them. And so there's an issue there with untrained people. So we had to be quite careful there. I have approached a local primary school, the Gooseberry Hill Primary School, to see if they might be interested in kids being involved. But I don't even think I got a response to my query. So it is difficult. We have had planting days in the past that we have had some children attend, but normally the children of the adults. Yeah. It's a very difficult one, and we really wish that we could get in some more younger people. We have recruited a few lately, but we could do with quite a few more.
Thanks, Ken. There's a question over here.
Thanks, Ken. Graham, I'm just from down south. Just a question, what was the spray that you used to remove the Watsonia, and what are the long-term residual effects of that in regards to native flora vegetation rehabilitation?
We had to work very closely with the Water Corporation because the land that we're on is a catchment area, and they would not allow us to use any other herbicide than glyphosate. And the glyphosate we use is one called Bioactive, and Bioactive is aquatic life friendly. But that was the only one we were allowed to use, but we couldn't treat any closer than 20 metres from the flowing water. And that created some issues for us because the Watsonia doesn't mind at all. But if you miss that, if it goes towards dormancy before you've had the opportunity of spraying, it's a lost cause. But we managed, fortunately. But the Bioactive and the glyphosate is the one preferred because it breaks down readily within the soil.
Just the last question here from Joe.
Again, this is Joanne from the State NRM program. And this is just a comment rather than a question, just to say thank you very, very much for such an excellent demonstration of photo point monitoring.
And also, I wanted to say, Ken, both that and also noted that you have popped in there that the funding came from the State NRM stewardship grants and how important they have been. I just wanted to ask people in the room, how many people in this room have had those stewardship grants helping with their projects? Yep. So it's a really impactful, and we need them to continue and to be growing. And certainly WA Landcare Network is doing our best to try and grow those grants. So there was one last question down the back. Was there, Jack?
I think that's an absolutely wonderful template for removal of Watsonia, and anyone who's walked down Whistle Pipe Gully or any of those other areas realises how challenging that removal is going to be. I just wondered what your consideration was for the residual seed bank and whether there was longer term plans to monitor and continue with the removal. I think it's about a 5 to 6 year residual.
I've been working the park in other areas where the Watsonia is almost cleared. Every now and then you see a new Watsonia plant, but rarely. And that's only because of persistence. Persistence in frequent revisits, annual revisits to the same area over and over, and might take place over 3 years, 4 years or longer. We are committed to maintaining this area, the work area, clear of Watsonia. And so that will extend into the future. And this is where I question capacity. But the other thing we would like to do is to extend the area, and if it's a metre at a time over a period of years, it's something we might try to do. But yes.
Doesn't that just speak to how important it is to have land care groups that are there for a long time, and so that they keep on going back to those patches and making sure that they're kept in good nick, and follow-up weed control is an absolutely critical part of that. There was no breakages. That's cool. Joy McGilvray is now going to speak to us about the Friends of Jorgensen Park, which is right there, and about the creek line restoration work. And I just wanted to remind people, 4:15 today in the foyer, we're joining up together for those who have got the time and capacity to go for a walk in Jorgensen Park itself. Over to you, Joy.
Thank you. I can't remember what I've written, so I don't have to read. Got it on? Oh, sorry. I can't remember what I've written, so I'm going to have to read. Sorry. So Jorgensen Park out here is a reserve of approximately 40 hectares managed by the City of Kalamunda and enjoyed by the many people who visit it. Next slide.
Closer
It's
up,
closer.
like it's an ice cream.
Okay. It was used as a golf course for about 40 years from the mid-1930s onwards. The fairways have created wide swathes of open areas between strips of remnant native vegetation. The park is bordered by Mundaring Weir Road, Spring Road and the Kalamunda National Park out here. The Bibbulmun track runs through part of the park, and in 2012 the Friends group was formed by a small group of regular dog walking people with the aim of removing large woody weed species encroaching on the local native vegetation throughout the park. A creek runs for approximately 900 metres through the park adjacent to Spring Road, which flows into Pissy Brook, then onto the Helena River and into the Swan River. This creek in its riparian area was choked with weedy acacias, including longifolia, pygnantha and artiophylla, lantana, African lovegrass, blackberries, polygala and other weeds with very little native understory. As we go back one, yeah, there, thank you. It was the Friends group dream to restore this creek line to a more habitat-friendly environment for black cockatoos, quendas and other fauna by removing the weeds and revegetating it with native flora species. We have the next one, please. In 2018, this dream was realised with the award of self-funding, considerable financial and physical support provided by the City of Kalamunda, together with in-kind support from the Friends of Jorgensen Park, Bibbulmun Track Foundation, the community and schools of Kalamunda. Initially, the removal of the grassy and woody weeds was to be a gradual process, but the city engaged a contractor using a small, powerful, manoeuvrable machine which cut, slashed and mulched vegetation in less than a fortnight. The resultant mulch was left on the ground to stifle weed regrowth and eventually break down. The pine trees were felled and laid across the slope to slow water runoff and create habitat for various species. Woody debris bunds were created across the creek to slow stream flow and minimise sediment slumping. Can we have the next one? Oh, there you are. Approximately 6,000 seedlings were planted in 2018, with follow-up plantings in excess of 1,000 each during each of the following years, including this year. National Tree Day events have been held for the past 4 years, and additional plantings have been carried out by the Friends Group and the City of Kalamunda. Holes were pre-drilled to ensure seedlings were well dug in. Benefits of this project have been the increased numbers of black and red-tailed cockatoos using the park for feeding and roosting, more diverse vegetation, less weed growth. This is the lower section of it. A water point has been installed downslope, and camera monitoring has shown that it is being used by numerous birds, kangaroos and the occasional dog. A program of ongoing spraying for blackberries is carried out by the city. We'll have the next one. Yeah. Ongoing woody weed removal is carried out by the Friends Group during our monthly work days. The ongoing threats include weeds, including blackberry, Pandaria pandorana, commonly known as wonga wonga vine, one to watch, olives, polygala, weedy wattle seedlings, Watsonia freesias. Erosion caused from stormwater runoff, rubbish and weeds entering the creek via the stormwater outlet, and rabbits. The next one. And the Friends Group meet for 2 hours, once a month for 9 months of the year to carry out weed removal and planting on this project site and other areas throughout the park. I might add that morning tea follows our workday. Very important. And as has been said before, there'll be a short guided walk around the project site this afternoon, and you may like to come and join us and see what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Joy. I'll just see if whether anybody's got a particular question to ask of Joy. There's several. Robbie.
Do you know what the name of that mulching machine was?
It's a forestry mulcher. Forestry, yeah. So it's got a slashing deck on the front, and it is very effective. They also brought in an excavator and attached the forestry mulching deck to the excavator. So the excavating deck can be raised above a weedy wattle. Longifolias to about 6 metres were under threat, and it literally just goes and it obliterates the weed, and it leaves all the woody material on the ground.
perfect.
We like the sound of that.
My question is, what is being done about stopping the suppliers of the likes of Polygalia from putting them into everybody else's garden to multiply?
Sadly, I don't know. I'm hoping that the other one is the Wonga Wonga vine, which I mentioned. It's for sale in Bunnings, and it's advertised as a water-wise garden plant.
Has anyone got any insight into what's happening? Because certainly weeds have come up in the nursery associations and discussions there. But clearly we could be taking that up, couldn't we? Yeah. Okay, I think that's one WA Landcare Network could take up. So maybe if we can gather any other, weeds of significance that you're experiencing that are still being sold in nurseries. The freesias and... Can I ask, maybe talk to, maybe Mick, would you mind just making a list of these? There's been mentioned about 3 or 4 already. Over lunch, can people just let Mick know your bugbear with weedy plants that are still propagated and sold? Yes, we have got quite a lot. Okay, just another question before we move along. Jim.
Just wanting to know, in that replanting, is there any natural reseeding going on, or it's too early yet?
No, it's not too early. There is reseeding. There's been some examples elsewhere in the park where we have removed enormous spreading weedy wattles, and after they were removed, we did a count, and then we've gone back and monitored, and there's a lot of regeneration, and even the plants that were suppressed by that plant have grown. So it is making a difference.
I'm just going to let Mick add to that. Mick did work for the city of Kalamunda, which is why he knows a reasonable amount about this place.
Thanks. Yeah, look, the other thing that the forestry mulcher does is it just takes the plants off at the top. So all of the plants with geophytic, tubers and rhizomes, etc., were still there. And over the period of a couple of years, you can see that the plants are coming back. You can't bite those plants, you can't propagate them, but they're still there. So they suffer a little bit in the first year when they get taken out, but because you're not using a herbicide as much, you then get the plants that you can't get back. So I'd certainly commend the forestry mulcher for that purpose.
For self-reseeding, it means soil structures coming back into health.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Yep. So you're maintaining your soil structure, which is very helpful. So a warm thanks to Joy for sharing what's going on our doorstep right here, and you can certainly go out there and experience it personally this afternoon. Thanks, Joy. This is Narelle Mewburn. She's from the Armidale Gosnells Landcare Group, who've been very active for quite some time, and we've certainly visited some of those other sites and doing work across a whole range of different restoration and land care. And this time you're going to talk about the group's Eat, Sleep, Play, building wildlife habitats and urban environments, which sounds also like fun and sign us up.
Maybe not. I think I just watched that movie. What's that movie with Julia Roberts? Eat, Pray, Sleep. It's a little bit of play on words there. Yeah, look, really honoured and proud to work and get to care for Noongar. I'm joined here by my colleagues, Shane and Ross in the crowd there, and our group, Independent Not-for-Profit, spearheaded by Mrs. Pat Hart, sitting up the front here with me. Yeah, it is building wildlife habitats in urban environments, the good, the bad and the ugly. We do a lot of campaigning around these topics. I'm not an expert on this, but I think there's probably lots of us here that are. So this is really just to create some conversation. You can go, thanks. So I'm going to just touch on a few elements. So habitat boxes is something that's gained some popularity, particularly in the Gosnells and Armidale area. In the last 3 years, we've really started to install quite a few of these. We have got a lot of people who are super interested, so we started running these wildlife nesting box workshops. My advice to any of you out there who are going to apply for grants for these is to make them ticketed events, even if they are free, because they do get taken up very quickly. And find someone super passionate. We did one with Simon Cherryman. Most of you have had contact with him, I'm sure. His passion is contagious. It's more contagious than COVID, I think. He is just awesome, and to have him speaking and spreading that word for habitat boxes, artificial habitat boxes, is just awesome. Next slide. This is a little bit of something that it's had a dual purpose. This is what we've done at Marricarroll Wetlands. Marricarroll Wetlands is in the city of Gosnells. It's an ephemeral system, dries out in summer. This nest island is built out of Japanese pepper. And what it has created, when the water rises, the birds can find refuge there, and of course we have a lot of cats and foxes even in our urban environments, and so these guys can find a lot of protection from that. This is a really simple thing that we've been able to implement in an urban wetland, and it's had such a great result. Really easy to monitor. Obviously photo monitoring works really well. Yeah. Next one. That one. This is another really easy, simple, cheap way of supplying water in the summertime. These things will create a water source for up to 3 weeks. We encourage people to use them in the Banksia woodlands, those ones that dry out and where water is a little bit more difficult to get to. Shane's been building a few of these, so he's probably the person to talk to if you've got any questions around those. There is a trick to where you put them in your bushland and what you create around them so that the little critters can get up to them. So these are water sources for lizards and the smaller animals in our bushlands. Talking of reimagining, going back to that, this wood duck reimagined this possum box as a nesting site. So I think I think we can all take a little bit away from that. Thinking outside the box is always a good thing, and we're really glad to see it getting used. And it doesn't matter what sometimes they get built and they're targeting a certain species, and it's not necessarily a species that you wanted in there, and that's okay too, because it's still creating habitat. Next one. The March of the Marin. It's not about the Marin, it's about the snags and structures in the water. We do a lot of education with our community members who just last year actually wanted these structures taken out of the river. They're ugly, they're messy, you can't canoe your canoe down there when they're in the water. So we had DBCA come out and do a little bit of a talk around what this kind of structure and these snags create for animals in the river systems. So we even encourage people to create these snags in the river systems. Next one. And not really habitat. Well, it's not the kind of habitat that we like to see. So heading into summertime, we'll be doing a lot of campaigning and working with fisheries, educating people around, because we pull a lot of these out of our waterways. So I didn't mention that we're in the Canning Southern Wollongong River area. I should have noted that at the beginning. So a lot of our sites, 30 restoration sites along that system. So we're having to get called out to pull these out. These catch all sorts of critters, ricalis, turtles, fish, usually not what they're targeted for, which obviously they're Marin traps. Totally illegal in our public waters, and because they're sold in a commercial space, people don't realise, people don't know that they're illegal. So we'll be doing a lot of campaigning over summer, because coming up to the Marin season in February, there's no way out of these traps. Once they get in there, they cannot get out. And I'm just going to finish up with this one, because I didn't get to talk about planting, and that's a core business. That's our core business. That's really what we do. This is some signage. We've started to get funding to do a little bit more signage around our restoration sites. This is at Champion Lakes, so there's a lot of people that use that area, and it's a way for us to build more community capacity in our patch. So that's it from me, nice and quick. Any questions?
Great, Meryl. Are there any questions? Over to you, Uncle Nev.
Thanks. No, you do a great job down there. Typhus. What are you doing with typhus? Because some of the places where I go and do stuff is at Herdsman, Lake Munga, and it's a terrible, terrible plant.
Yeah, it's...
And the state government tried to say that it's a native, when we know it's not a native. There is some types of typhus, but the typhus in Herdsman and Lake Munga aren't natives.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible bloody plant to have around. Do you have that issue down there? How do you get rid of it?
We've got a patch in Mary Carroll wetlands actually that we maintain. In some areas we have to get permits to clear it where it is like acting like a pest. Shane, you can probably elaborate a little bit more on, because these are the guys on the ground for us, as far as the management of typha.
Yeah, I don't think we have as big a problem as probably have in Herdsman Lake and some of those other places. And I think probably a big part of it is the nutrients coming in. So unless you can find a way to manage that, it's probably going to be a problem forever. Around the whether it's native or not, I think that's a real question. I suspect it might be, but I think there's been some recent research around that. So that's a big question to ask as well there. I suppose the other management techniques that we're trying to get away from herbicide use in a lot of what we're doing. So some of the things that we've tried is drowning it, so cutting it really low, allowing the water to sort of, you can only do this in a year where you've got enough rainfall that the water gets high enough, cut it really low, and sometimes that will exhaust the tuber under the water there. Other methods, I suppose, is manual removal, but I think where you've got those massive populations of it, if you are trying to manage it, then you're really probably going to have to rely on herbicides in some of those areas. But yeah, I guess that's just from our experience.
I noticed that all the native birds pull it up and they won't eat it. So we know it's not a native. Because the swans, ducks, and all that, they pull it up, you know, like the Yanji grass, swans, ducks, every duck and animal in the lakes will pull it up and they'll eat it, except typha. Typha is the one plant that the natives refuse to touch when they pull it up out of the ground. It just floats off and clogs up the waterway.
I think that there's been some discussions around it actually hybridising, the two species hybridising as well. So there's still research happening, and that's an evolving evolving space, but it's just been a little bit of a spanner in the works as far as having to get permits to clear it in areas where it really is a pest.
And complained about the typha, and they cleared 3,300 square metres, and the lake and the swamps are far better off for the removal of it than having it left there. And the birds, I noticed that they're more freely swimming around the swamps. We don't get any foxes there anymore because they can't hide in the lake and in the leaf system. So I think it's a lot healthier in relation to what we got in the habitat.
Yeah, down south we've certainly used the drowning method. Quite a few farmers who've got typhus, that's what they're doing. It doesn't seem to permanently kill it off unless you can drown it for a really long period of time. So it certainly has held them back and helped other things to come through. So it's a management rather than a getting rid of.
Yeah, is there any stories around it from traditional stories as far as usages?
We don't know any usage for typha,
No.
but we can use, and we eat the Yankee grass.
Yeah.
That's one of the tasty root systems of our natives, is Yankee grass. And very tasty. And you know, the swans and all the birds, they all know that.
Yeah.
Yet typha, they'll pull it up and then it'll just float off because something in there tells them they can't eat it.
Interesting.
That's great cultural science, really, and knowledge coming through there. So great information. We're just sorry, Vicky. We now need to close this really excellent session on hearing from all of those local champions about the work that they're doing in their patch. And as I mentioned before, you know, each of those patches, when they join up together, they're making a really big impact. So it's just taking heart from the sharing of this work to know that there are lots of other people who are also passionately making a difference in those patches. So let's just keep that going and get even more groups and schools and so on involved. So we're covering the whole of Western Australia. That's my big picture. Let's cover the whole of WA. Why not? In fact, we need to. So can we give a warm thanks to everybody who's come and presented?